So I just finished Nier Replicant, File 1 by Jun Eishima and Yoko Taro. Um, this was a weird one. I feel like I say this a lot. So it's based off of a video game. So if you're reading a book based off of a movie or based off of a video game, you're setting your expectations low, right? You're not expecting a great novel. And in this case, it's exactly what you get. It's very sub-tier, poorly written. Like reading it, I don't want to go off on a tangent about young adult fiction, but I'm going to. Reading it, I haven't read young adult in so long. And first of all, I hate the term young adult. To me, a young adult is someone between the ages of 18 and 25. That's young adult. You're an adult, but you're still young. But of course, in fiction, young adult means like teenagers and people who are not adults. Anyways, so I'm reading this and I'm like, it doesn't even feel like young adult. It feels like a level below that, like early teenage years. Just the dialogue is just awful. Like characters say things to each other that like no one would speak this way, and it's like very positive and like I wish I had a really good example, but it's just I don't know, it's just like people will say stuff and then describe what they're saying and why they're saying it and their reasons for saying it and the feelings they have while saying it all out loud. And it's like show don't tell. This is just all tell all the time, and it's just awful. But it's so weird because it's has very adult language and adult vocabulary that you would not want to like a 12-year-old reading, and also adult themes. So it's a really weird dichotomy where it feels like it's like a child's book, but then it's like using very strong language, and I don't know how to parse that. And it's not like, oh wow, what an interesting dichotomy. It's just strange. And anyways, so the plot. Oh boy, the plot. It's this boy, 15-year-old boy, and his 7-year-old sister. Their parents are dead. They live in this village. His sister's been sick forever. Turns out she has some sort of a magical curse plague thing, and so he's going to get medicine for her. He runs errands for the village to make money to get medicine for his sister. There are these adult twin women who sort of run the town, question mark. One of them, they're Devila and Popula, who like, one of them runs a library and is sort of really smart and intelligent, and one of them is not on that level, but they both sort of have ulterior motives, and there's like in between each chapter they have like a report that they're writing to someone, or maybe just for their own sakes, about the village, and there's more to meets the eye to this whole place. But anyway, so this character Nier and his sister Yona, she's sick, so he has to do stuff to get medicine for her. And she has become infected with something called the Black Scrawl, where there's black writing and script flowing over her body that shows that she's near death. And so he goes off and does stuff, and like at one point they run out of money, and he thinks, what could I sell? Could I sell our house? Then he realizes, though, there's still one thing I have left to sell. And then he recollects the time when he went to this other town and was attacked and almost dragged away by this man who was said, once he near broke free and ran away, said, if you ever need money, you come back here. And so Nier then begins going to this child predator to sell his body to him to make money for medicine for his sister. So that's like very early on, this horrible. While the writing, you're reading this horrible event while the writing is so childish, and it's like very off-putting, disturbing. I don't know. Again, the writing, I thought maybe it's like really bad because it's an English translation of a Japanese novel, but and then I'm like, maybe the Japanese language, they word things and they say things in a certain way, and so maybe that's part of it, but I don't think that's part of it. My goal is to read another Japanese book this year, to not to compare, but just to get to experience more. Anyways, so he's doing this, and then this Devil and Popula, they sort of understand what he's doing, what he's giving away to this horrible predator psychopath. So they offer him a job to go fight these things called shades. So they're these monsters called shades that inhabit the world. They can't interact with sunlight, but in the dark and in shadow they exist, and they're like horrible monsters. So people are going to go out to hunt them, and so they get Nier to go out as well. And it turns out one of the other people that's going with him is this essentially rapist who's been, and when he sees him, the man says to Nier, like, "Oh, I told you not to go tempting any other men. What are you doing here with these other people?" And describes how he is, like, how his body is and how his strength is, and just horrible stuff like that. There's a part earlier to this where Nier talks about his long hair and how he hates his long hair because how it touches his body, and he wants to cut it off, but he can't because then the villagers will be like, "Why'd you cut your hair off?" And anyway, so this like psychopath who's gone out to kill these monsters because he just likes killing and has a huge weapons collection is just mocking this child that he's abusing. So anyway, so they go out, kill a whole bunch of monsters, and oh no, something happened, and that horrible rapist person died in the attack. And it's sort of like hinted that Nier, using the advantage of the chaos, went and killed him. So, I mean, that's good, but the trauma this 15-year-old boy's experienced, all while doing this for his sick and dying sister. Anyway, so this is how the story starts. Eventually, his sister goes missing, and it turns out that there's this legend about the lunar tears, these flowers that can cure anything. And so his sister went out to go and find them. Turns out not to find them to cure herself, but to find them because they grant any wishes, and she wants her brother Nier to be rich. So he doesn't have to work to get medicine for her. So anyway, so he goes to try and find where she went. It was at this place called the Lost Shrine. There he encounters this flying book called Grimoire Weiss, who is this magical grimoire that just floats around beside him and can talk to him, and is sort of arrogant and pompous. And anyway, so the two of them are now like a team, and the grimoire can use magic, and so now Nier can use magic, and they can defeat lots of shades. And they defeat these really big shades that are like statues, and they managed to free Yona, who had been in some sort of a magical barrier at this lost shrine. So he takes her back. She's like getting worse and worse, and Grimoire Weiss reveals that his purpose is to collect these things called sealed verses, because in this world magic and words are somehow interrelated. And so that's their mission now, is to collect these sealed verses by defeating these giant shades. And in doing so, they will get all the sealed verses, and then they can go defeat Grimoire Noir, who is sort of the counterpart to Grimoire Weiss, who is the big bad guy that they have to defeat. And once they defeat Grimoire Noir, the plague will be gone, the Yona will be saved happily ever after. So that's what they do. They go off fighting these giant shade things. They encounter a woman named Kaine, who is she swears an awful lot. She's very gruff, and turns out that she's half possessed by a shade. The shade started to take over her body when she almost died, but because of her strong will and her grandmother's love for her as her grandmother's dying, that she was able to survive. So she's half shade, which makes her being rejected by her village. So she's sort of on her own. So she is joins the crew, and eventually, because Nier says that they're friends, and she felt weird about that, but joins them anyways. So they go off and become part of their adventures. They go to Seaside to get this fish that they need. They go to the Airy to defeat this giant shade. They go to Facade, which is this desert kingdom where everyone speaks a different language and follows a set of rules, and there are over 100,000 rules that everyone strictly has to follow. Everyone wears masks there, just weird little things. And then they go to this this manor, this sort of rundown manor where there is like a robot butler ? And the master of the house is this boy who had been corresponding with, they thought was corresponding with Yona. It turned out it was the butler who was corresponding with Yona, which is kind of weird. But this boy Emil, who has to wear a blindfold because anything he looks at, he becomes instantly petrified. So he sort of joins. No, he doesn't join the crew at this point. And another thing about Kaine is that she's intersex, but because she identifies as female, she dresses in like the most promiscuous looking lingerie, and that's just what she wears out in public and in the world every day. Which, I mean, good for her, but that's a thing. So we have Kaine, we have Nier, they're collecting these verses. Then one day they see Emil, who has come to Nier's village, and blindfolded, he's run the whole way. And he's like, something's coming. So there's this giant evil shade that's there. There's a big fight. They have to trap it in the basement. In order to trap it in the basement, they need to sacrifice Kaine. She like holds the door back, and then Emil has to petrify her to keep the door shut. But at the same time, this sort of mega shade is just a distraction for this creature called the Shadow Lord, because of course he is, to show up and kidnap Yona and take Yona away. Why Yona? Who knows? So that happens, and Nier also gets stabbed a few times and almost fatally wounded. And then we have a 5-year time skip where we find Nier is now 20. There's more shades in the world. There's more black scrawl everywhere. Things are getting worse and worse and worse. He's still looking for Yona. He can't find Yona. Kaine is still a statue. But he gets a letter from Emil saying, hey, I think we have some information on this petrification thing, because Emil's been studying petrification, trying to find a way to cure himself and to cure Kaine. So they go back to the manor. It turns out it's sort of an ancient laboratory that's hundreds of years old. It was built in like the 2020s. 2026 is one of the dates that is given. But this is hundreds of years after that. So it turns out this manor is built over top of a laboratory. They go down to the basement of the laboratory. They find this creature, this very disturbing skeletal creature with a big spherical head that turns out is Halua, Emil's twin sister. It turns out that they were experimented on as children hundreds of years ago, because Emil doesn't age. In the past 5 years, he still looks the same as he had. So there's a big battle where the result is they destroy Halua, and Emil absorbs her powers, but in doing so turns himself into kind of like a horrible monster. He's still the proportions he was, but he is now like a skeleton boy with a big spherical head, and he's really sad about that. But he no longer petrifies things just by looking at them, and he has the magical abilities to cure Kaine. So they go back to the library, they cure Kaine, she comes back to life. The thing that was held in the basement for 5 years comes out, but Nier is really strong now and manages to kill it. And that's where this one ends. I guess this is part 1 of a 2-part series. So they managed to get Kaine back. He's strong enough now that he can defeat stronger shades. And they still have to find Yona. So that's the plot, but like I said, just like really poor writing, I would say. There was one sort of interesting sequence that I didn't talk about where they go to the Forest of Myth, and it's like a weird dream virus where the entire populace of the village has fallen into a sort of a long slumber, and Nier catches this and then also falls into this slumber, and then they have sort of a dream sequence where it becomes text-based. I mean, it's text-based because it's a book, but the actual story itself becomes text-based. Like the characters are visually seeing text in the form of narration that is appearing, and they're like, the narration's leading them one way, and they're having metacognitive knowledge about the narrative, and they're saying, well, hey narrator, why are you saying that I'm smiling when I'm not smiling, and stuff like that. So that was kind of a strange, weird sequence. But anyways, other than that, it's not a really well-written book. Very strange story, but like I said, it's based off a video game, so probably should just play the video game. Yeah, that's part 1 of Nier Replicant. I don't think I'll get part 2. I got this because it was really, really cheap. It was like 75% off. It looks nice. Nice hardcover. Anyway, so that's Nier Replicant.